Welcome to NeedleXChange, the stories behind the stitches. My name's Jamie Chalmers, aka Mr. X Stitch, and in this episode of NeedleXChange, I'm interviewing Shea Wilkinson, a contemporary embroidery and textile artist known for switching mediums to protect their balance and for chasing the next beautiful pattern. In this second part of our chat, Shea talks candidly about quitting quilting at the snap of a finger, taking a 2-year hiatus from art, and why felting became a healthier, slower practice, less addictive, less competition-driven, and more sustainable day to day. We get into process and motivation, plus how Parenthood sparked a new series idea, photographing soap bubbles up close as bifurcation, fractal landscapes. Oh yes, but the good news is we also end on sequins, shiny things, and the weirdly deep joy of sparkle. Gotta love it. I'll be back next week with somebody else from another part of the stitching universe, but for now, enjoy the show. I'm just interested because you said like almost with the snap of the finger, suddenly you just went, I'm done with quilting. Mm-hmm. Like, are you able to talk us through that? Like, because that's fascinating. Like, and whether you had this like creeping sensation building up, or you were just like, as you said, you're just like, well, what am I giving up because I want to quilt some more?
Well, no, I mean, I didn't have that creeping feeling, and it's sort of annoying because, for example, I bought $200 worth of cotton batting for my quilts. And then, within maybe a month of that, I was like, I don't want to quilt anymore. And I, have all this investment in materials that then I sold everything from my studio. But I will say that at Parallel Worlds, as, people will see, it started to incorporate different materials, including fibers. And so I already started to get the sense that fibers were the way forward. I thought with quilting, but turns out I kept the fibers and I more or less dropped the quilting. But so as I was finishing Parallel Worlds in preparation for a solo show, and because I had that show, that deadline, I already kind of understood that series was coming to an end. And I was just making the last pieces for that series. I knew that in my mind. It was over. And I had already started playing more with fibers, which I don't have pictures of because I never actually fully finished it. But that snap of the fingers and being done, that happened maybe just a few weeks before my show. And so I just had to force myself to finish a final piece or two, which was okay to do. But I knew at that point that was the last show with art quilts. That was like the end of that. And so it's kind of sweet actually to have a show as sort of a celebration of the end of that era, which I understood to be the case, that it was an end of something.
And you were at peace with that decision then?
Yeah. And I mean, at that time, I also made other plans because I was also sewing professionally for that company I mentioned, sewing handbags. And to me, that also seemed like a dead end as far as I was concerned. Like I couldn't do that forever. I didn't want to do it forever. And so lots of things had to change. And that's when I decided I'm going to teach English. I already had qualifications for that. I'm going to go back, teach English. And I didn't have many plans beyond that.
Move to the other side of the world and all that sort of stuff, isn't it? Yeah. So all of that, and then there's a period of resettling, reestablishing Shea version 2.0 or whatever it is. And then, were you nervous when you started doing needle felting, or did you have a little thing to go through? Because it feels like you're it's like, I don't know. I was going to say it's like stopping smoking, but when you stop smoking, you really just have to stop smoking. But it's like, yeah, when you're in love with a sport and then you go, I'm just going to try table tennis instead or something. A bit nervous in case it all flares up. I don't know.
Well, starting the artwork again is what you mean?
Yeah. Were you happy to do it? Were you nervous to do it?
I was. But before that I was already felting quite a while because where I live, it's cold. I knew I needed some really good mittens. So I learned how to felt by making my first pair of mittens. And then I was like, oh, mittens, this is fun. And I made a lot of mittens. And they're like, what do I do after mittens? They're like, oh, hand puppets. And so I made a lot of hand puppets. And that's also when I started not only wet felting, but needle felting. And after making a lot of those and they got more creative and more elaborate, it was a creeping idea at first, I could make art again, but I wasn't quite sure. And I thought about it for a while, but I did keep my website. So I have a feeling that somewhere in the back of my mind, maybe I knew that I would return to it. Otherwise, I think I would have closed my website too. But I still had it. And I thought about it for a while. I thought, well, if I did do something, what would I do? And started sketching a little bit again and started thinking. And then I finally bought the materials I would need, like silk threads and more wool, some beads, and everything I felt like I would need because I was starting from scratch again. My studio was obliterated. So it was exciting, but it was nerve-wracking. And making that first piece when I didn't really know what I was doing, I just had this idea in my mind, and introducing it to the world is like, I'm back. Yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and I just because I don't know, it's like, right. So I used to smoke cigarettes when I was a kid, and I smoked for quite a long time, about 15 years. Then I stopped smoking, and then one day I had a cigarette and I smoked for another 4 years. And then I stopped smoking again, and then another day I had a cigarette, I smoked for another 4 years. So I've now learned, don't have a cigarette. But like sometimes you just wonder whether there's part of you that thinks, oh, I'm probably going to end up getting completely obsessed with this. Or do you find that maybe, like you said, the slowness of the process, you can't get these things out quite so quickly. Maybe that does, maybe the whole process has just slowed you down, and it's decelerated whatever those feelings were that you had when you were banging quilts out.
Yeah, and I've thought a lot too about environment, and I wrote an article about this, which is why I've thought a lot about it. It's like in the US, there's so much emphasis on stuff being really fast. Like you have your cars, you go somewhere fast, you don't want to spend a lot of extra time on anything. And it's just a very fast-paced life. And quilting is well adapted to that, like, because everything's fast, and quilting is fast. But where I live now, it's much, much slower. Like everything is slower, and I walk everywhere. I don't have a car. So it's like, to run this errand is going to take me 1 hour on foot. Okay, well, that's normal to me, and that's like a nice way to spend my time. And so felting also, I think, really works nicely with that new mentality of just, it takes what it takes. If it takes, 30 minutes to do this, fine. If it takes 2 hours, whatever, I'll start tomorrow, or I'll just, keep continuing. There's no rush. And also I'm not in competition, hardly in any competitions or exhibitions anymore. So, I'm making series, but making them just at a pace, which is actually maybe intentionally slower because my only storage is under my bed, and I feel my storage filling up, and it's like I need to, I can't make too much right now until I sell something or ship it off somewhere, and then I'll replenish my storage space. So that it's always in the back of my mind that I don't have an infinite amount of space to store things, so there's no need to really make anything too quickly.
So the ways that you use the felt, then, a lot of it, am I right in thinking you're kind of using it as your base layer, like fabric? You're felting your backgrounds and then embellishing over the top of them. Yep. But then when I look at like the microfauna series, you're also like illustrating with felt or something. Is that right?
Drawing basically with it.
Which is like a sort of, because when I think of needle felting, I always think about forms, and maybe I'm mistaken there, but I've known enough people who've made objects in shapes. I once made a needle felted version of myself. So it lends itself to 3 dimensions, whereas actually you're somewhat restrained from that. You're using it as just like another layer on the top or something, or like flat sculpture. Yeah,
I mean, it is a layer on the top that is flat. Sometimes it's curved, especially with these microfauna. There's more relief than in the Dawning series. Dawning series is pretty much more or less flat for the most part, except I did do some experiments with depth, but they're really hard to store. They're really hard to ship. So that's why I didn't do too many of those. But I did make it about probably an inch and a half off the surface in depth for 2 pieces, I think. With microfauna, mostly they're flat, but there are areas where there's some maybe 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch depth as well. So there is sculpting to create those forms, make them nice and smooth, as well as flat shading, or just creating an illusion of shading using gradations of gray.
Yeah. And so that must be quite interesting, because I guess there's only so much engineering you can put in an art quilt to turn it into a 3D object, isn't it? There's some constraints and stuff. So it must be interesting then, because I guess you've now got 3D abilities. I guess it's just up to you how far you want to push that.
Yeah, which is so much of it is about storage and shipping. Like one thing that's great about fiber is that it's easy to ship generally and cheap. But the more elaborate it gets, the harder it is to store, to ship. And I'm used to it being easy. And so I don't really like those constraints if something's too three-dimensional or elaborate. But in essence, yeah, I can do really whatever I want, which is really nice because quilting does have those built-in restrictions, even though I tried different things with wire and it did work and it was fine. But particularly with shading, quilting for me was really limited. And with felting, I love that I have all these little pinches of blended threads of grays and so on, and they're just kind of splattered all over my piece. And like, let me grab this little pinch over here and I'll blend it with this little pinch over here and then dab it on. It's like, no, it's not quite right. And just keep blending and playing. And on the one hand, it can be totally monotonous and boring, but on the other hand, somehow it brings joy, to the heart.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I don't know, but maybe with the quilting, because you've done so much of it, you kind of feel like there's not a lot of new territory to explore. It feels like here you've got fairly limitless possibilities of how you can play around with it.
Yeah, definitely. And with quilting, I incorporated fibers at the end. And now with felting, with microfauna, I incorporated some quilting too for the background to create a little bit more sense of relief and texture. And so I think I'm excited to see where they'll go as a hybrid. I think one day I'd like to incorporate more fabric a little bit, or like gauze, for example, or organza, I mean. Yeah, and see what kinds of hybrids I can make. I want to use it all, really. I'm just not there yet.
But then it's going to be interesting as well, I think, to see. I don't know. I was talking to Marcia Bennett Mayle ages ago, and she is a textile artist who explores like Black significant figures in history. But then she's also a stonemason, and the work she does with stone is a really different story that she's telling. And I think it's interesting how different media can sometimes, you can have one narrative in one direction and one narrative in another direction. And then when you start blending yours, it's going to be interesting to see how your narratives get blended or what the next series. Have you got ideas in mind about future series that you want to explore?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I feel like I could totally continue both series that I've done, Dawning and Microfauna, but I think the next thing I want to explore is based on bubbles, which sounds a little bit simple, but the reason I really want to do these bubbles, and I'll tell the backstory, is I don't know which direction to go in. Okay, so when I had my daughter this year, I just found myself all of a sudden surrounded by bubbles, like, from the washing machine always going to like other soapy type needs. And, I didn't have a lot of time to do anything at first, but I was playing with the sensory toy I made her, which was a clear plastic jar with liquid soap. And I started looking at these bubbles, because I was showing her like, wow, these bubbles are actually bifurcation patterns, which is something I had tried to work on with quilting, but I had seen computer-generated bifurcation patterns, and they weren't that easy to find on the internet. And I just...
Can you explain bifurcation to me as though I'm an idiot?
I actually don't exactly fully understand it either, because I've tried to learn about it, but it's really quite complex. But visually, I think if you were to see it, you'd just understand everything. So essentially, it's like we have this branch, and then the branch branches off into two. And then that branch branches off again into two. And like fractal. I mean, it's essentially a fractal, as you talked about before, but just a particular pattern of fractal. They're so cool. They're so beautiful. And like I said, it's just one of these things you don't have to know about. You just have to see, and you think like the universe is just gorgeous. And this pattern underlies so many things we don't even realize. Including soap. So I was looking at this soap and I was like, wow. And like I would shake it a little and there'd be new patterns. And I got a new phone this year, which has a macro camera. So I could, while she was sleeping, I'd get really close, take pictures, kind of turn the jar, take more pictures, change the lighting, take more pictures. And so now I have hundreds of pictures of these bubbles up close. Where you can just really see that fractal shape. You can see how the light hits them. So yeah, it relates to something I tried to do previously with quilting, which I found more difficult to do with quilting, and it was on the back burner. And now I feel like I've found the way.
Yeah. So you're not talking, like when you say bubbles, everyone just thinks big round bubble, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about when bubbles start to cluster and then they're just a series of different planes and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the side view of them, not like the typical above view where you see the round, beautiful circles just connected. No, the side view is a whole other like science fiction type landscape.
But that's interesting because in some ways then if you go back to like your parallel word series and you've got cubes and those kind of things, you're still looking through planes, something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely specific things that really attract my attention. And this one I'm really excited about. Even though I thought of it almost a year ago now, it still makes me excited to think about it. So I can't wait to get to it, but I don't know when that'll be because my daughter's just a year now.
Yes. We'll get onto that in a second. I do think as well you need to look out Romanesco broccoli as well, though, just because that's such a trip.
Well, now that when you described it, I think I have seen pictures of it. It's sort of spirally.
Yeah, and each spiral is made of smaller spirals, and it's just it's just bonkers, and it tastes pretty nice as well with a bit of butter and black pepper. So that's always quite good. It's a good source of fiber. Has parenthood then? How old is your daughter?
She just turned a year.
Okay, how's that working out?
Oh, I mean, it's working out great. This is a podcast, very often you talk about embroidery and hand stitching, and I've been hand stitching a storm this year because it's the perfect activity while she sleeps. It's quiet and, it's soothing. So I'm an embroidering maniac this year.
I always remember, and I should do this myself, when I interviewed Nikki McDonald, which is like, I don't know, episode number 8 or something, but she was like, she just takes her needlepoint because there'll come a certain point, right, when your kids, particularly if you have more of them, you're taking them to lessons and waiting to collect them from lessons, right? And I have this on a Tuesday. Both of my girls have swimming at the same time. So I have to go and sit at the edge of a swimming pool for like 40 minutes or whatever. Perfect time to get a bit of stitching done. I swear that was what Nikki said all the time. I have to do just chatting nonsense to people because I'm going on one now. When your kids are in lessons, like you're in the same place with other people. And after a few weeks, you might, if you don't know them, you might kind of vaguely get to know them, right? And I remember once at one swimming lesson, I met this guy called Darren, and it turned out he was an artist who lived locally who does like day collage. So takes posters and things, found objects and just sprays on them, makes really cool, like posters and stuff. And I was like, all right. And then I started looking forward to the swimming lessons because I'm going to go and see Darren. We just talk about art for like half an hour and go separate ways. Then his kid levels up in the swimming class and that's gone suddenly because he's on a Sunday afternoon instead of a Thursday morning, whatever it is, so you have all these transient relationships. So then you go, I'm just not going to make any friends anymore because the pain of losing the people that I get to know is too much, which is where you think, I'll just take some stitching. I'll just go and sit by the side of the pool and do that instead. But I can't help it. Now I still go and talk. There's one mum who I go and talk to because she's really sound and her kid's in a different class. But thankfully, there's like a 10-minute overlap between our classes. So like the minute my kids are in the pool, I go running over, say hello to her for 10 minutes and then she goes back off again or whatever. But just putting that out there, it's my top tip. Don't make friends with anybody because it will just break your heart. But do you find, I mean, I don't know, is there any feeling that you as a parent may become a different artist to you as a non-parent? Do you feel like there's any of that sort of stuff?
So far, I don't think so. I mean, in the sense that what I was interested in doing, like when I just became a parent, is still what I'm interested in doing now.
I mean, I would observe, I'm not trying to put ideas in your head, but I do observe that actually you're not a very biographical artist, I don't think. You're more like an observational artist, isn't it? Your job is to look at the world around you and just provide insights in that. It reminds me of like when I interviewed Joetta Maui and she like making work that is the way the light hits the wall and bits of dirt influences that, and it's not, that's my wall and here's the story of our ability. She's just abstractly observing the world. And I feel like you've got a similar perspective.
Yeah. I mean, whatever strikes my fancy that's not related to, I don't make art about my feelings or my history or anything like that. It's not personal in that way. I like to think it's hopefully more universal in that we can all appreciate these things and see the beauty in them. Yeah.
So then actually being a parent won't impact the output of your work, might just make you think, I better make money out of this stuff.
At least occasionally.
Yeah. I think that's what it definitely did with me. I was like, I'm still doing it now. Like my oldest daughter's 8, and I'm like, yeah, I should really try and make some money so that she has a future. You just live in hope, but it's cool. Do you enjoy being a parent?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and she's great. She'll probably hear this in a few years. So what else can I say about her that she'll be happy and when she's old enough to understand?
She sleeps like an angel. She's already. Are you doing is she weaning or any of that?
No, I mean she's just. I'm at home with her all the time, so we just do our thing. And I love making things for her, and I love thinking about what she'll love, in a year or two when she can really appreciate things. I'm making a sweater for her right now because I've made all her clothes and everything, but I'm making a sweater. The first thing that hopefully won't get totally stained and disgusting, but I'm using scraps from other fabrics to do flower appliques, and I'm going to sew on some little rhinestones. And it brings me joy. I look at the sweater like, wow, that sweater is so cool. Like if I were a kid, I would love that sweater. And so I hope she feels the same way. But in a way, I guess I'm also, as they say, reliving a sort of childhood. I think some parents mention that you can, I don't know, heal your childhood or your inner child or just enjoy childhood again through your kids. But I do think there's some sense of that happening.
Yeah, and it would be cool. I think I don't know, Flora's starting to get to the age where she can be quite embarrassed by me now. The mistake she makes, to be honest, is she specifies the ways in which I am embarrassing, which is pretty much like giving me more ammunition. Do you know what I mean? So it's just, she's like, oh, don't do that. That's really embarrassing. I'm saying, what? Don't talk really loudly in the playground or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's just like, but yeah, there's such a lovely spot, isn't there? When the kids think you can't do any wrong and they look up to you and all those sorts of things and accept it all. And then at some point, I feel like I'm in quite a sweet spot. I know that 10 years time when I've got a 16-year and an 18-year-old and I'm 10 years older, it's all just going to be a complete nightmare. So we roll with it, but that's cool. But I'm glad.
Too much about that.
You got to enjoy it. You got to enjoy it.
Speaking of her, she's got to go to bed here sort of soon. So I don't know if we need to move on to the last your really, really important questions.
Yeah, come on, let's do this. So do you have, where should we go first? Let's go books. Have you got a favorite book?
I do, and I've prepared already. I read it in the spring this year, probably, because all books that I had read previously, they just don't seem relevant to me, even if at one point they were my favorite. But my recent favorite is called The Last One by Alexandra Oliva. And I don't know, I just found it really moving. And when I thought about this question, my favorite book, emotionally, this is the one that came to the surface. Like it might not have been the most exciting, thrilling or whatever, but I found it really touching. Should I tell you a little about it?
Yeah, go on.
So a lady she's kind of rethinking her life. She doesn't know if she's, wants to have a kid and whatnot. So she joins a survivalist reality show as a way to, process her present and her future. And while these people are on the reality show, something happens to the world around them, some sort of calamity. We don't know what. They start seeing signs around them, but they sort of think that this is part of the survivalist show, like pranks or tricks or whatever to up the stakes and make it more thrilling. But eventually, it becomes sort of clear something's not right. But she continues because she's in this sort of denial. And that's what I find so beautiful about this book is her denial of the situation in order to survive. The things that she tells herself, she might come across a dead body and be like, oh, they just put that there to freak me out, to make me quit, but I'm not going to because I'm going to win this thing, like that sort of idea. But at the same time, unconsciously, she understands that there's something not right and it's plaguing her subconsciously. And I don't know, I just thought it was really beautiful to watch her make it through and the strength it took to deny the reality around her in order to survive.
Do you read a lot of books?
I listen to a ton of audiobooks. And I read a lot of books at first when my daughter was really, really young. But for years and years, I listened to, at least 2 audiobooks a week, if not sometimes more.
Right. And would you do that while you were working as well, like when you were making stuff?
Yeah. So for a long time, I haven't listened to music when I work or podcasts even, because you have to make decisions so much about that. And I like audiobooks because they're 8 hours, 10 hours, 13 hours. You don't have to make a decision for that amount of time. And that appeals to me.
That's interesting. That's interesting. But like, because I don't know, it's not the same, but like I find if I'm listening to people talking, like I can listen to non-fiction quite happily when I'm doing something like driving. But if I'm working, I feel like I need to listen to music because otherwise I'm going to get distracted by the story.
Uh,
But you don't have that.
no, but I do think it's a skill that like has to be tuned because it can be hard to get. Well, I wouldn't get distracted from the work, but my work would distract me from the story at first. You know, I'd realize like, oh, I don't really know where the story went. How are we here now? Because I remembered this thing happening. I don't know how we got from A to B. But over time, I got really a lot better at it. And even if I miss things, I don't know, somehow my brain's better at picking up on or just going with the flow and not worrying too much about it.
That's really interesting that you don't get distracted from the work as well, though. So the work's happening regardless of what you're listening to. So you'll just choose to listen to stuff that gives you an interesting story along the way. Like, I don't know if you've ever sent an email with song lyrics in it accidentally, like none of that cross-pollination ever happens.
No, but I can't listen to music and do anything that requires words at the same time. Like I know already that that's not a thing I can do.
That's interesting. That's interesting. It's almost like synesthesia or something. So music then is just a barren desert now. Don't have any music.
Kind of. But what you said about the story, I will mention that sometimes I don't want to work at all, but I want to hear my story, and that'll get me to my workstation. That'll get me going because it's like, like how else am I'm not just going to sit in a chair and listen to my audiobook. Like that's ridiculous, but I really want to listen to my audiobook. So, you know.
That's clever. That's quite a good shortcut, isn't it? Yeah.
That really is a good motivator.
That's cool. Do you have a favorite album or a favorite band?
Well, I actually had a musical desert for a really long time, years. And it was a cycle in that because I never listened to music, when I did listen to a song, it would get trapped in my head because my brain was starved of music and it just like held on, the death grip and wouldn't let it go. So it drove me crazy. So I avoided music really hard or a lot. But with my daughter now, I started listening to music more. And so I listen to more or less random songs from the 60s and stuff that's, okay for kids. Even if I've never heard it before, I know it's going to be okay for kids. But as far as favorite album goes, I guess I would say the album I could still listen to now and enjoy, even though it was my favorite when I was a teenager, is 10 by Pearl Jam. I still think that album's rockin', even if I don't listen to it, but I could and I would really enjoy it. I know that.
Yeah. I'd say the same. I used to really like Pearl Jam. Like I was into like heavy metal for a very long time, but then when kind of grunge kicked in and Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and all those kind of gubbins or whatever. But there's something about Eddie Vedder's voice, isn't there?
Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen the MTV Unplugged version of them playing that album. I don't know when that was. Probably I had it recorded on cassette I bought on eBay back in the day. Now you can see it on YouTube. But yeah, MTV Unplugged version of that album is awesome.
Oh, so here's a sweet spot. I've just literally checked this out. You're going to like this. I was going to say to you anyway that there's this music series called Rockabye Baby, right? And it's lullaby music. So plinky plonky, like little xylophone sounds, but they're covers of bands. So you can get lullaby versions of AC/DC, Nirvana, Guns N' Roses, Elton John, Madonna, Pearl Jam. They've got a Pearl Jam album, so you can listen to Pearl Jam songs, but it's like Rockabye Baby version. And they're just plinky plonky little versions of them. And they're so good. Like the Michael Jackson ones, or there's one of Bjork, but basically that just sounds like Bjork without the music. But it's really nice because instead of having to listen to, I don't know, Mary Had a Little Lamb or whatever, you just get to listen to songs you used to like, but they're plinky plonky little versions of them. So that one in particular, the Pearl Jam one, I'm pretty sure you'll be like this plinky plonky version of like, I'm still alive. And you'll just be like, this is a sweet spot. So I tell you to go and find that immediately. That's great.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out for sure.
You do. What, do you have a favorite film?
Favorite film? Also, haven't watched films in a really long time. So anything that might have been my favorite, I think is irrelevant. But what I do have a soft spot for is made-for-TV movies. Really like them, especially Hallmark movies or Lifetime movies. If you're watching it with a girlfriend or like your sister or something, they're just so much fun because they're cookie cutter, right? You know exactly what's going to happen. You can basically say the speech before they say it. And with another person, it's just hilarious when you can, I don't know, guess everything, make fun of everything. It's like, oh, she's going to tell them her parents are dead right now. And they're like, my parents died 3 years ago. I'm like, yeah, got it. Right on schedule.
I was thinking that about Mills and Boon books the other day because I was walking through the library and they still make them, just those romance novels. And it's the same thing, but it's almost like with those and with Hallmark movies now, they're like 30 years in. So actually they've just become their own like art form sort of, haven't they?
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. They are. I like that.
Because I know certainly, isn't it, Hallmark goes massive on Christmas, don't they, as well? And they'll have like 10 new Christmas movies. But you can kind of tell by the title that she's a girl who used to be a lawyer and she's just come back to our hometown where they're really big on Christmas. And, oh, there's her old boyfriend, but he's like so-and-so. Or, oh, this guy walks in and his dad's a prince in a country you've never heard of. It's all of that, isn't it? Yeah.
It already cracks me up just thinking about it. Yeah, you're good. I bet you would be fun to watch Hallmark movies with. You'd be a lot of fun.
I think there's a time and a place. I'd probably need quite a lot of wine to get through one if I think I like the idea of them more than the reality of them, but there is a time. And this is what I've learned by being a girl dad as well, is sometimes you just got to sit through this stuff. It's kind of all right. It's good.
My dad loves to sit and watch Hallmark movies in quiet. He doesn't like when, my stepmom and I make jokes about what's going on. He's like, be quiet, guys. I'm trying to watch it.
Respect.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a friend, shout out to Carla if she's listening, who feels similarly about Murder, She Wrote, the TV series, which she'll sit and watch with her sister all the time because it's got that same kind of formula to it. I love that. Right. And then is there a fact that not a lot of people know about Shea Wilkinson?
Well, I want to share my love for sequins. I have a massive sequins collection that I love. And if I could work with sequins all the time, I would. But the world doesn't appreciate sequins the way I do, unfortunately.
Okay. Tell me why we should appreciate sequins.
Well, I read about it, actually. I was like, why do people like shiny things? Because Christmas just happened. I was working with my sequins, making Christmas ornaments. I'm like, man, they just make me so happy. Why? And I read about it, that, in fact, shiny things apparently subconsciously remind people of water, and water, humans are wired to find fresh water to survive. And so when they see something sparkly, it indicates inside of them that there's something, great there. And releases endorphins and maybe dopamines and other chemicals that, are satisfying to people, apparently, because of this connection with fresh water. I don't know if it's true, but I found it interesting. And I can totally feel like, I probably did get a bunch of endorphins there after working with my sequins for 30 minutes because I feel great.
That's amazing. So 2 questions. Have you ever made your own sequins?
No.
Because I think you can. I was trying to think where I learned it. Someone was saying about, I don't know whether they were practicing, I don't know whether it was at college or something, but it's almost like there's a certain type of paint and you can like paint and then make your own sequins by like trimming them or something. Like you should, like making your own sequins, like making your own crack for you might not be a good idea. And then when people have a collection, to me, like I've got a comic book collection, which is something that I keep and don't necessarily use. Have you got sequins that you will not use because they're too precious?
I would use them all, but my husband actually has a package of my sequins that are actually more like rhinestones, I guess, the sew-on kind of flower that's really sparkly. I can only use that with his permission, and I have to, make a good case for why I need that.
He's like, this isn't about me, darling. This is about you, because I know you'd use them all in one go, and then you'd be very upset afterwards. Yes,
he loves them. It's a deficit product. That's, so they must be used wisely.
Scarcity driving up the value of them in a classic case of economics. That's amazing. Well,
but yeah, sometimes I think like, okay, I could use this one or this one. I have way more of this one. So I guess I'll use this one just to make sure that I always have this other one on hand. If absolutely it's called for.
My precious. Like exactly. Hey, Shea, thanks for having a needle exchange with me.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation a lot.
That was good. Right. Marvelous.